Hello and welcome to the second part of the Gateway to BIM webinar series. My name is Zoltán Tóth. Over here is our resident architect, Mr. Illés.
Hi there.
Today we look at how to use architectural data. Lots to do, so let's take a look.
Building Information Modeling, or BIM for short, is a wonderful tool to create great architecture. Unfortunately, many might believe that BIM is out of their reach. This is because adapting from 2D drafting to BIM might seem time-consuming and costly. Also, it seems that BIM means a whole new workflow and methods which you need to learn from scratch, and the new requirements and legislations may seem too complicated to follow. Our mission behind ARCHLine is to open a gateway to BIM. ARCHLine makes the transition from 2D drafting to BIM step by step. It takes you from 2D to 3D modeling and introduces BIM parameters to your workflow. Sharing your projects with other professionals is effortless. The software makes sure that you can use your already existing CAD skills, files and projects to stay competitive. The gate is now open for new challenges and previously unavailable projects. ARCHLine is an out-of-the-box IFC certified BIM software. No extra plugins are needed to complete your project because your design will contain everything in a single file. You will work together with other parties of the building industry seamlessly. Avoid misunderstandings. Use real products. Collaborate better than before. BIM is quickly becoming the standard. Make sure you are there. With ARCHLine.
As a quick reminder of what we talked about last time, we looked at how to use ARCHLine, how to build up a model from scratch. We worked on a building which had no previous documentation, so we looked at what kind of tools we can use to build up a 3D model, while we also looked at the BIM tools that can help you with your work. Today we are going to take a different perspective. We are going to look at what to do when you already have some kind of documentation, right?
Yeah. Today we still use the same project. This will actually go over the whole webinar series of this 5 series episodes. But now, just as you mentioned, at the very first half of this event, we will focus on how to process DWG files, JPEGs, PDF files, and how to handle that content, what you need to know when you work with those files. And then we will also cover how to turn content into a real terrain, how to set up the geolocation of the building, and actually how to assemble the terrain with the building, because that could be also an interesting thing when you work on a side of a hill or something. How to align them perfectly as they will appear in the real situation.
Yes.
And also we will talk about the shadow analysis, solar access, how the sun will cast shadows at a certain time period over its surrounding with the building and the surrounding buildings, because many countries demand this for you to be able to prove that your building is not affecting the neighbors much more than it's allowed. So basically, this is what we will cover today.
Yes, as always, I urge you to ask your questions during the show. You can ask it on the right-hand side of the video. If you can't see the chat bar at the moment, you might need to minimize the view, and then you can submit your questions. Whatever you are going to ask, we are going to try to incorporate them into the show.
Yeah.
But we are always very grateful of all the questions that we are receiving before, during, or even after the shows. This is what makes it very relevant.
Yeah.
And now let's backtrack a little bit and talk about the import formats in general. What kind of file formats, or how would you group the file formats that ARCHLine is able to work with?
Well, ARCHLine is, we can say that it's very, very communicative with the world around it. It's a very good platform to work with other professions and other architects or other designers, and to receive those data that they have created with perhaps other software, and then work with that and pass it back to the original designer or to other professionals. The first focus is obviously the BIM, how you can communicate with BIM software, and that's the IFC at the top of the screen now. That allows you to actually communicate buildings instead of models and drawings. We cover this a bit, and we will actually cover this in a little bit more detail in the following sessions. But the main point here is that you will receive the building itself, not just the drawings, the 2D or something like that. Now then comes the something like the documentation, communication, or something like that, like for example the DWG DXF files, where you will likely receive drawings, annotated and detailed drawings, which you can use. This we will cover today as well, how to digest the data, how to process it, and how to turn that 2D content into a real building.
Yes.
And how to actually open it. There is also other format for 3D files, and now that's a very wide range. You can read point clouds into ARCHLine, classic model files like OBJ, 3ds, SKP. So these are all formats that you can import complete models or just like assets like a chair or something from a maker. Also, there comes the renderers, the third-party renderers. Now, you may know that ARCHLine has a built-in renderer, but for those of you who already use some solution like, for example, Atlantis or other third-party renderers, ARCHLine directly connects with their native format, and then you can just export your model from ARCHLine, and then you can do the visuals in the third-party software if you prefer. And also, of course, you can read JPEG files. Now, those are for a very wide range. You can read in JPEG files, for example, for materials. We will cover this in the visual session. Or today we will work with a scanned copy of a drawing, which is also a JPEG file. And we will also talk about the PDF files today. Now, PDF can be a raster PDF or a vector PDF. We will cover that. The ARCHLine can read both of those. So basically, this is what you can read. Talking about the final parts there, which is the Microsoft Excel. That's where your quantity takeoff will be listed, so you can make the calculations.
But since today's webinar is about architectural data use, I think the most important formats that we have to look at today are PDFs, JPEGs, and things which traditionally are used for carrying data, DXF, DWG, for instance. So let's see how the data process goes. So how do we import something into the system? And then when you show us how, talk about what kind of formats we can import in those areas.
Well, first things first, you can always find all those file formats that are supported with the current version of the software in the file menu. So you just go to the file and you will find import, and there is a list of kind of like the favorites, but you can, whenever you go to the import, you will be able to reach all of the formats. So this is a bit wider, it's a bit longer list than the previous was. So here you can always find the formats that the software can read. This is one of the sources. This is the traditional way. But what I like to use a lot, that is the drag and drop. So you can actually just find
you can just pick one file in the File Explorer and you just drag and drop it onto the software itself.
That's
and
right.
Then it actually recognizes what kind of formats we're talking about and it imports it accordingly.
So now that I have these here, I can just click and drag and load that data. Now, before I do that, let me just close this project because first we would like to focus on how to start the work. So I just open up a new project. So this is an empty project now, which I will work on now. So this, whenever you open the project and create a new project, you will always end up with an empty paper. That's the ground floor of the floor plan. And here you can import whatever source you have. So now I have, first let's just talk about the PDF files. Now talking about the PDF files, I have two samples here. One is a situation plan and one is a building drawing, actually.
I already differences between them?
Yeah, I already opened those. It's appearing here. So the first one, this is a classic CAD drawing saved in a PDF file, or some say printed in a PDF file. So what you see here is the content. It's with neat, nice, clean lines, and I use Control and scroll. So whenever I zoom in, for a very short time, it's pixelated. But whenever I release the mouse button, it's always nice and clean. So you can understand that this is actually vector.
Okay.
So it's like a CAD drawing. Just now it's saved in a PDF file. You can import this into ARCHLine by using the file, import, and PDF as geometry. Now let's just do that, and I select this now. And when I do that, the software automatically reads the content, and it will visualize, it will actually create a drawing in front of you. And then the first step, always when you import something from whichever source you have when it's a drawing, you should consider that it might be not in the correct scale for you. It was perhaps correctly scaled in the source software, but it's not necessarily correctly scaled when you open it. So here actually we have an information of how it was scaled.
Yes, it's 1 to
here.
20, I think.
Yeah, we could actually rotate it, but it's not that important. So it's about 1 to 20 or something was the original value. And if I use the measure tool, this is what I use quite often when I load something, and I can tell that this is very likely not true, that this wall is only 7.7 millimeters.
We might need to scale this up. So how do we do that?
So to scale a content up like this is, you can see that when you select it, it's a group. So you can actually scale a drawing. It can be a group, it can be a bunch of lines or something like that. When you select that, you will find the edit, and there is this move and scale. And there's a difference between move and duplicate. The move will actually move this content and create the new version. The duplicate will keep the original and create the scaled version as well.
But now we can just move it.
I just would like to upscale it. As you can see, you can have those ready-made options. Now it's not okay for me because I need to perhaps 50 times make it larger.
So, yeah, 1 to 50.
So I click here, and then I have the option. First things first, I need to click to the origin of the scaling. Now this can be anywhere. I will just click here, and then when I move my mouse, you can see you can actually graphically scale this. But now I know the scaling value, so I click here and I click on the type the value. So I will be prompted to type a certain value that I need to use, and I click OK. And then now the software rescales that, and I can check whether I like the result or not. And I think
maybe you can use one of the dimensions to
yeah, let's just check this. I know it's in millimeters, so this should be correct if I measured with distance, and let's just click here. Well, perhaps it was a different value, but as you can see,
yes.
The thickness and the whole content is enlarged. So it's the only thing that you need to figure out.
I think it makes sense, but it's an imperial.
Yeah, perhaps. So I should have scaled it 2 point something, because now we are working in the metric system. So whatever I use, I will end up with a drawing like this. And even if now it's around 400 millimeters, I can actually turn it into a wall very quickly. I just go to the building, and instead of starting the wall tool and drawing around, I can use the walls and DWG drawing. This is perfect. I can just click on near to the one of the endpoints of this line, near to the other one, and on the thickness of it, and then this will be automatically turned into a real wall. So I can just quickly go through, click, 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 and 3 clicks make a wall, and just do it all around, and then place the doors and windows. We actually have a detailed video about this, but this is how you can create a drawing out of a 2D, create a building out of a 2D drawing.
I think the point here is that the software is able to recognize the lines if the PDF is imported as such. But what happens if you don't have such a vector-based PDF? What happens if you only have a scanned image?
Yeah, if I have the other option, let me just create a new project. If I have the other option, which was opened here, this is still, it's a PDF, but as you can see, we can already tell it's pixelated. If I zoom in, it won't clear up. It's just even getting worse.
So that's as good as it gets, right?
That's the most that I can take of, because this was scanned with a scanner, and it was not vectorized, or it was not coming out of a CAD software or something like that. I can use this, but the method is a bit different. Now here I will either choose the file. Let me just create a new project, okay? I will either choose the file, or I can use the drag and drop. Now I will go with the file, import, PDF as image. And it was, well, I just navigated off, so let me just open it from here. So it's here, this one. I just drag and drop. By the way, if you drag and drop a PDF content, it will be automatically treated as raster.
Okay, so even if it's vectorized, even if it's geometric, you have to import it from the menu. Otherwise, it will be treated as a raster image. What happens now? So
now we have this import option, which is the resolution. Now, when you have a content which can be large resolution, small resolution, but you can tell the software how it converts it. Now, the default option, this here, is likely to be okay. If you import something and you can see that it's worse than the original, then you need to increase this. If it's fine, then you can keep, I think this default option will go most of the cases. If this PDF would have many pages, I could select the pages, but now I don't have that, so I just click OK. And the software reads that, and then I can, click with 1 and 2 clicks, and I can work with that, and I can work on top of this.
Is this in scale?
Well, as you can see, when you import something, you can set up with 2 corner points, so you won't be able to tell whether it's okay or not. Likely it's not. 99.9% it's not okay, and simply it's because the image file does not contain any scaling information. So you need to, we call it calibrate, and this works in a very easy fashion. You just click on the image and you use the local menu of that image, and there is the calibrate tool. You can find this actually in the drafting as well, but it's very simple to remember that you can find in the context menu. It's called calibrate. The calibrate needs a distance that you know about on your image file. So you just select the starting point, and by the way, the longest you can find is the best, because
so you should try to find the longest.
There will always be some bias in your scaling, but if you measure long distances, the bias is smaller. So let's just go with this one. As you can see, there's already an error here, which I can place myself into this scaling, because I cannot determine easily which is the corner point. So this is okay here. It's 24.7.
Don't forget that you're in millimeters now.
Yeah, now I'm in millimeters. And by the way, talking about that, whenever you are in a situation like this, you can at any time, you can go to the settings and you can find the units and angles, and there you can change the primary unit. For example, in this case, this is what I need. And then later I can change back, so it's easy to change there.
You can see it in the bottom right corner with
here.
What the actual unit is.
Yeah.
So going back, what you do is that you right click,
and
then you pick a distance. It's
So
always good to pick a longer distance.
This
and
one?
then you just start to type in the value.
And this here, and it was 24.7.
Yes.
And okay. So now something happened. I can see it's larger, and I can use the same dimension measure distance tool to measure. And if it's approximately okay, then it's okay. So it's aroundish.
Yes, that's as good as it gets.
Yeah.
We are working with a scanned low-resolution image that we have to be satisfied with what we have.
Yeah, so you need to consider that there will be a few centimeters difference between the reality and your scan. You can always recalibrate it if you need it, but because of the software cannot find the snap points, there is always a bias in working with a scanned image.
So much about images. What happens with CAD files, DWG, DXF? How do we import those?
Well, if you have another content, like, well, let me just mention that this would have happened if I work with a classic JPEG file.
Oh, yes,
it would be important exactly the same. So if I import this, I measure this content, and then I can work on top of that. In that case, I won't use the files, the walls on DWG. I will just literally click through and type the distances and draw the walls on top of the image file. So going back, what you asked about is the DWG file. The DWG file is a very widespread format. You can find the file import here in File Import to DWG file, and also the click and drag import is supported. So that's what I do. So I just click and drag, and then when this dialog opens, let me just go back here. I will see a preview of this content. Now this content has not just the preview, but there is a tiny ruler here. It appears to make you understand whether you should use this value here, or you can use any sort of other units. Some of the DWG files contain information about the scaling of the measurement system they were created in, but not all of them. Actually, quite a lot does not contain any sort of information about that. So you can actually tell the software that, well, I don't think it's 10 feet here. Let's go with millimeters. That's also not okay, because this is actually what we can see here now. It's a building, and that's a building lot. So this should be around, I don't know, a few times 10 meters, and this is obviously not good. But
so what do you suggest? What?
This will go okay if I think if I select meter, I'm closer.
Yeah,
Let's just zoom in. And what I usually do, I try to find some place. For example, here, I know that this is a thickness of a wall. So if I zoom in and I try to find it, see, this is 5 meters from here to here. That means this is 1 meter a unit. So this means that that is likely okay, because I know that this wall is around 40 centimeters, 400 millimeters. So this is okay.
So what you suggest that this is some kind of try and error kind of thing.
Yeah, but as you can see, it's very.
And you have to play with the preview to find the right scale, and then you import it.
Actually, if you already know the multiplier that you need to use, then you can go the classic way, and you can just tell that it should be, I don't know, 1,000 times larger.
Okay, so this works as well.
But if you would like to use the units, then this is how it works. So this is what we want. I think the scaling is perfect now. Let's go with OK, and then I can just see the result when I click OK. It appears as a 2D drawing. This was imported. Now, when you import DWG file and any sort of files supporting layers, likely you will see the layer structure of that file. In case of the DWG file, this had several layers, which now that I've imported it, I can see in the layer manager. And the layer manager appears here at the bottom. If you click there, you can find a layer list. This is now a mixture of the layers that I already had in this project and layers that came with the DWG file. Now, as you can see, there's a filter list here, and this filter actually filters for the all layers, used layers, and the situation plan. Now, the situation plan has these 4 layers. That was the original name of the DWG file, so that's why the filter already got its name based on the name of the file, of the DWG file. So this is how I can easily filter the content. I can rename them. I can set their visibility, editability, printability, and so on. So these are all there for your convenience. So now when I hit OK, I can start working with that. There is another thing about this. When you would like to figure out what content belongs to which layer, I think one of the easiest and quickest way to use the layer walk. Now, layer walk appears as a list. So you can click on any of those, these are actually layer names, to figure out what the content of that layer is.
So the layer walk shows the contents that you can actually work with at the moment, so the active layers, and then you can toggle between them. So you can isolate parts.
Yeah, for example, if this would be a much more detailed, much more sophisticated DWG file with a lot of detail and annotations and things like that, I could only focus on the terrain lines, or if I want. Because actually now this is what we would like to work with. We would like to end up with a terrain based on this DWG file. This is why we loaded that. So I can use that, or at any time I can just get back to the original one and start progressing with that.
How do things get to a layer?
Whenever you create something in ARCHLine, like let's just go with the wall. That's a very basic thing. When you draw something, when you click with 2 clicks, it's automatically created on its default layer. That's how we call it. The default layer is what you can find when you right-click here and choose Property. And now it will end up on the wall load-bearing wall, and this is where you can actually change it. Or when you already have something, like for example this line, when you select it, it tells that it's actually on the line layer,
okay. So
which
is automatically
now I can change to something else. Yeah. So either you import something and it comes with its own layers, or you just simply set the layer for your convenience as you want to set it up. Now, before we start working with this, as you can see, this is actually aligned with the north. So now this drawing was created to be aligned with the north. So now north points to the top of the drawing. Yes. But I actually find it easier to work with it if these lines are horizontal. So makes sense. So I just select the content. And then I have you can actually rotate the content like this. This is very easy. But in this case, it's very difficult to figure out how I should rotate it. What is the exact rotation value to be able to handle it as a horizontal part? So instead of this one, I use the...
Sorry, before you do that, should we mark the north direction before we rotate it? Because then
that's right.
That's right. Would be lost.
Yeah. That's good to mention, because when you have something and you rotate it later, you won't find if there is no, as you can see on this drawing, there's no north symbol. So I will make one myself. I use the line tool, and actually I will use a line with an arrowhead on top of it. So I just click here and I create a tiny arrow.
Just some
this
kind
points to north.
Marker so that you can see where north usually or actually is.
And it's now when I select it, it's part of the selection. So I click here instead of the classic rotation, the graphical rotation, I click here. So I have the rotation options, and then now I can find the rotate from. This is a very handy tool because this allows you to set up a rotation origin. This is where I would like to rotate this whole content around. And then I can click and pick up a point which I'm actually picking up and then rotate around the
so one point
rotation
stays
origin.
where it is, it's pinned down, and the other one moves around it.
Yeah, see, this is what happens. And when you have a drawing like this, it's very easy to misclick some places because they're tiny little, you know, endpoints and division points and so on. So to be able to lock it to the horizontal direction, just move close to the horizontal direction and keep holding the shift key. This is the horizontal lock, the direction lock. So whenever I move my mouse, see, it's not changing, it's always horizontal. So now when I click to accept it, it was locked and rotated the way I wanted. And then now, because I have created this north symbol for myself, now I can set up the real north direction in my project to align with this one. There is a cool thing about this. If you click on this one, it actually tells you the angle. So you just click here, or you just remember that it was around 108. So you just click here on the north symbol and you just type the same value. It's 108, and then now the north is aligned with the original one.
Now, staying at the topic of geolocation, I think that's the next thing what we should do while processing this site plan.
Yeah.
What kind of ways are in ARCHLine to position this on the map? So how do we decide or define where this thing is?
Well, to stay in place where we had been already, this is actually a list. And this has a north direction setting here, which I just used. There is a sun position, which actually is not, it's the sun location, but you can set the geolocation, and based on that geolocation, the sun is determined at a specific point of the globe and a specific date and time. This comes interesting soon when we talk about the solar access. And there is another thing, and it's in the file BIM and the project parameters. This is actually a BIM parameter that you can save and set up. It's actually here in the project location.
It's like
so
the GPS coordinates.
Yeah, so now when you click here, you have all those options that are available in the software. You can either go to the Google Maps. This is what I will use. You can use the same cities list, or this is also a place where you can set up the north direction. So if I click here, and let's just try to find a location in Austria, I think it was.
Yes, I think there's an empty lot still there. So let's try to find it and position the model.
I think this was the location.
Yes,
let's go with this one.
Yeah, I think that's good enough.
Sorry, this is in Hungarian. This means satellite. So if you click here, you can see.
This setting comes from the operating system.
Yeah.
So you can't really change that. But here we see an empty, vacant lot over there. So maybe we can use that.
So this is where you can set up a location. Let me just zoom in a bit, and so now we can see it's okay or not. Then you can change it. This is actually the project origin that you can set up here, and then okay. So now the geolocation is set that way, and then I hit OK. Then from this point on, it is considered to be on that specific location of the globe. So when you make the solar access, which comes soon, then based on that geolocation, the software will calculate the shadows.
So what other ways are to use this site plan? So how do we turn this into a 3D terrain model?
Well, this comes with a few red lines, as you can see here. These are the terrain lines. Those are not terrain lines yet. Those are just lines that we can understand. Yeah, this is very important.
This is just a two-dimensional DWG.
Yeah, as you can see, there's no 3D yet.
There are some numerical values on it, but it's not what we need.
Well, and talking about that, it's also good to mention that there are other ways how you can import terrains. This is only one of the ways when you can manually pick up lines of a DWG file and turn them into a DWG file. But actually, if you have something from an engineer who measured the site and has that specific file format, ARCHLine can read it, and then you don't need to manually create the terrain. And actually, when you import the terrain from Google Maps, you can also automatically create it. And this is a situation when we have something in a drawing that we would like to turn into a terrain. So we go to the building part, and there you can find the terrain options. Now these are the options that I was talking about, and this is what I will use now, the creating the terrain by contour lines, because those are the contour lines that I can click on. And to be able to work on top of these, I will use the select an item. This is actually...
Isn't it an open chain instead?
Yeah, I'm sorry, the select an open chain. So an open chain is a series of items connecting to each other. That's what we call a chain.
So even dashed lines would work?
Yeah, dashed lines are fine. So I will go with the select an open chain, and I click on one of the items of this open chain, so the software will run through it and it will recognize it. And now I can type the original value. It's 133.5 in meters above the sea level. And when I click OK, then it turns it into this terrain line automatically. Then I can go through these remaining 6 or 7 terrain lines. And while I do that, please talk about the terrain features a little bit.
Because not all of them are going to be dealt with. And we had a separate webinar when we talked about terrain and how to import them, how to create them, and how to manage them. But since you're not going to show all that again, I'm just going to quickly tell you what's on here. It's just below me. You see a screenshot of the available options. In addition to creating a terrain, there's one element you can add to it, and that is a plateau, a thing which is either cut into the terrain or the terrain is extended until that certain level is reached. We are going to show that pretty shortly. Another tool is the road, which is actually very good for creating service roads or any kind of zones into your terrain, which should go along a path with a customized cross-sectional profile. We also have building volumes that we are going to show, and it's very important. We also have zones, which could be certain designated areas of the terrain. And lastly, we have the information on how we want to show the terrain. If we want to have the contour lines, or we want to have a triangulated view or perspective on it. But let's go back to see what Ilés has here. So now you turned all the lines into terrain lines, and what's next?
So now I just finished with the determination of the last line, and then now I click, I hit enter to finish it, and then I hit enter to close the command. And then now when I click on the 3D hammer, now the software can visualize the terrain.
Oh yes, so it's done.
So I can rotate that, and as you can see, this has a few slanted areas in it, and this is what you talked about. Let's just talk about first the visual style of this terrain. The terrain automatically comes with a default material and triangulated, but this you can change. You click on the terrain and you can use the local menu of it, and there is the 3D representation. Actually, this also appears in the top of the menu. And here you can, the default option was the triangle, and you can also go with contours or grids. I think contour is absolutely fine now, so I can see the contour, the terrain lines of the levels that are intersecting this terrain.
I think that building lot should be realized with a plateau, right?
Yeah.
Because you want to have a flat surface.
Yeah, that's what you talked about. A plateau is a flat surface. So when you go to the terrain and you use the plateau tool, you can first add one, and then you can obviously modify it. So when you click on add, you need to determine on which terrain you would like to add this plateau onto. So you click on that, and then you can actually just draw the contour of it. Or if you are lucky enough, like I am in this situation, if it's also hatched, it's filled up with a pattern, you can actually click on this select an item, and then you can select the pattern, so you don't even need to go through. And as you can see, now the software recognized its contour. And now what you need to tell is the height of the terrain in the same coordinate system as the terrain itself. It's always above sea level. So now, as you can see, there is this designated value. This means 0, which is the flat ground, should be this specific value. So I just type that. And when I hit OK, the software will ask me one last question, and that's how the edges should be treated of this plateau. Now, there are several scenarios. You can actually just make a vertical cut into the ground, or you can make an extension like in a slanted or sloped surface. Now, this is what I will do first. You can define the slope here. I will just define the slope all around, everywhere, 45-degree angles. When I click OK, the software does that, And as you can see, it's 45-degree angle here and it's 45-degree angle there. The software automatically decides whether you need to cut into the terrain or you need to extend the terrain to create to make the connection between the plateau and the surrounding.
But what happens if you have a retaining wall? Because here,
here.
I think we have one. So
Yep.
you may want to have a vertical cut.
Yeah, in that case, you have the option to click on the edge of this plateau and find the terrain itself. This is actually the terrain, there's the hatch, so I need to go to the terrain. And here I can find the plateau options. The software already recognizes that, okay, that's a contour of the plateau, so this is what you can do with the plateau. You can modify the slope on all of the sides or pick them side by side. And then when you do that, you can just tell that this is, well, now it's important that when you set up an inclination angle, in this case 0 means the vertical. So you need to say 0. And okay, and then now I click here as well, I tell this is also vertical, and I click here and I tell it's also vertical, okay. And as you can see, this is the contour of how the whole thing will look like. And when I click and I hit enter, now it's vertical.
Perfect. How about we actually add the retaining wall?
Okay, that's just with a wall. So I just click on wall. I can select any of those predefined styles that I have, or I can create one. So I just go with this here and I just draw the wall around and I finish it here. And then I think I'm okay, so I'm just done with that. But
where's the wall?
Yeah, but we cannot see that in the 3D. And why is that? So the reason to that, and this could happen also when you already have a building and you import a terrain. That would be the same situation. Now, when you start working with a project, you will always have a floor system, a level system. This level system is a very simple one with a ground floor, 2 floors stacked on top of that, 1 below, 3 meters each, and a few settings which we covered in a previous session how these work. And there is one and very important information where the 0 of this building is. And if it's set to the sea level, now this is, remember, this is already 100 plus 30 meters above sea level. So when I click OK, I will see that actually the building, my building parts are at zero. Okay, so to fix this, I need to go to the flow manager and tell that this should be the same value. If I remember well, this was the value of the 0.
So you can compensate for the differences, yes?
So I can elevate my building to the proper plateau, to the proper place. And now I need to rebuild the 3D to update the content, and now they're perfectly and nicely aligned here.
Perfect. How about, you talked about the shadow analysis.
Yeah.
And I think in order to see those shadows, maybe we need some neighboring buildings, especially because I see on the situation plan that there are some neighboring buildings. So how do we model them? Should we use the walls and...
You can do that, but actually for that there is the terrain, and you just mentioned the building volume. This is how you can actually quickly sketch building shapes around a real building. You don't want to likely model all of those. So what I need is the contour of those. So I just go to the terrain, building volume, and then I just go around and enter, and then I can set up, this is by default it's a block, but you can set up the values. Like for example, the top is maybe perhaps around 8 meters. This surface looking to the facade, it's around perhaps 3 meters. And the angle of the roof should be perhaps, I don't know, 30 degrees or something like that. And let's just set it up for all sides. So this is what I've got. Let's just change it to, I don't know, 45 for all sides, and so on. So you can just set this value to something that you much better like. And so this is what you will end up. And when you click OK, that appears here. Now let me just make a copy of this.
Yes.
And I'm just moving a copy. And instead of quickly, I'm just not recreating the whole thing, but I just reshape it to match.
Yes.
That's also
fine. Some time to do it this way. But my question is, and I think we can even see in the 3D what's going on, is that things are either pushed into the terrain, or maybe they are levitating above it. So
yeah, it's because by default they are also created on ground zero. So what I need to tell is that if I know the height here, because there is some measurement or something like that, it's very easy to tell that this should be, I don't know, above, around this level or something like that. But in case like this, it's a few centimeters won't make any change. So I just click here and I
just do
visually align it. That's also fine in this case. And just click there and I just do that with this one, and let me just push it back a little bit like that.
So now that we have the buildings ready, and I think, if I remember, we set up the north direction and
Yep.
the geolocation as
So
well. So
north
now we
direction is correct, geolocation is correct. There are a few buildings. Let's just imagine this happens also when you already have the full building, which we will load soon. And then you can go to the view, and there is the shadow, and there is the solar access option. Now this works in the 3D, and this works in a specific special representation of the 3D, and the software will talk about that. And it will, when you hit OK, it will automatically convert the content into a vector graphic drawing content.
To convert it, or the software does it, but it needs to be in vector.
Yeah, the software does it automatically. And now I can tell that this is the time and day and the beginning of the day and the end of the day in between, which I would like to see in 30 minutes steps, how the shadow is cast around its content, the other buildings and the ground. Also, I can set up a morning color. This will be something like an orange. I will set up an evening color. This will be blue. Also, you can set up the style of the text, the style of the shadow. Well, actually, now I would like to go with a filled shadow. So instead of a hatch pattern, I would like to see a nice solid, either gray or I mean either orange or blue. And also, I just would like to see a hidden line representation like this. I don't want to have colored surfaces, like the terrain shouldn't be green. Now it should be just black and white, and with the shadows cast on that. And then I also would like to calculate it for all of the surfaces. Now this is an option that could save you a lot of time if you enable this option on a larger project, because in that case you can just select the surfaces which the software should treat as shadow receivers. If you have, I don't know, tens of thousands of surfaces, this is a big time saver. So let's just, because now the project is very small, I just disabled that, so I will calculate on all of the surfaces. I just go with OK. And then now, as you can see, the software calculates from morning, 30 minutes steps, it's calculating the value of the shadow. So now we can see that our building, which will be here, will also always receive shadows from a little bit of shadow from the ground itself. That's natural, but it won't receive shadows from the surrounding buildings.
Perfect. I think now we can load up in the next phase of this project, and we can talk about...
Yeah, before we do that, let me just mention, because we talked about the change of the drawing. So now it's a vector drawing, as you can see. So you won't be able to rotate it like this, because it's a drawing. But at any time you can go back and switch it back to the image view, which was where I left off, and then I can just go there and back between the two representations.
That's the switch, that's the way back, representational ways. So now let's load up the next phase of this project, and we talk about details that we can add to the surrounding, because importing and processing this situation plan is just one part of the story. Yeah. How do we elaborate it? What are the things that we haven't showed yet?
Yeah, last time we covered how to create the building itself. Now we created how to create now we talked about how to create the terrain. And to talk about a few other things, let me just show you the surroundings. Now, for example, there is a staircase that I would like to create. So let's just talk about that. The staircase is a building part, which you can find here. And there are built-in shapes that you can start with. And by the way, if you don't find the exact shape that you would like to create, then don't worry. If it's similar, then go with that, and you can always reshape that. Or also, there is a tool in ARCHLine which allows you to create stair by threads. That means you can even turn a DWG contour drawing of a stair into a real stair easily in the software. So, but now I know that this is kind of a turning shape, which is here, an L-form shape. So I just click here and I use the contours. These are actually not real items. Yeah, those are just drawings. This was part of the imported DWG file. So I just go around and find the final location of this staircase, and then now the software automatically creates this staircase. Now, just as we covered this already, you can go to the details of this staircase, and you can at any time change the height of the staircase. For example, let me just change it, I don't know, 30 centimeters larger. And whenever you do that, you just wait a little bit, and the software recalculates the shape, and it will tell you that whether the staircase itself is ergonomic or not. You can also change the width of the staircase, And most importantly, you can also add some railing to it. So I will add a railing to the left side. It's here. And let's just go with this one. These are actually styles of the railings that you can actually create by yourself, or you can just go with the default built-in ones. And let's just go with OK. So now I have this one. Now there is one another thing which is quite specific to the external staircases like this here, and sometimes they do have a few walls around here. Now this can be created two ways. You can actually literally create walls, and the staircase has a setting to cut the walls. That's one solution. Or you can just go to the settings of the staircase, go to the support, and then you can actually change the thickness of the weight slab. This is the weight slab. You can change it to something very, very thick, like 4 meters. And in that case, you can easily end up with something like this. And this, you can, change the texture on it.
Yes, I was about to ask you that. How do we copy the retaining walls texture onto this weight slab?
Well, to be able to do that, I just right-clicked here and I use the Find Material. And Find Material tells me that this is Stone Wall 40, which when I click and drag and drop over the surface, I can tell that I would like to change and replace the material on this specific object. So when I click here, the software will change that.
A few words about using external objects in the plan.
For example, in this case, we could work with a few ways or benches or something like that happening around this building. So for that, just as we mentioned perhaps already, you can use the BIM libraries. There's a wide selection of things that you can connect to, like for example, BIMobjects.com, Synchronia, or our own showroom. You can also download sanitary objects and you can connect to Cadenas. These are all there built in. And you can also go to the 3D warehouse. Now, this is a very popular option, so I will go with this one now. And I will just go to find a bench, for example. Let's just go with a very simple search term. And when I find something that I like for example, let's just go with this one, for example. I can just check the details if I like it, and if I like it, I can go to download and click on SketchUp, the latest version, and then the software downloads it, and I can automatically place it either in 3D if I started the command in 3D or in 2D. Now, if I place it in 3D here, let's just align it with the wall like that, it automatically appears in the 2D as well, where I can just refine its position. And here comes an interesting thing that you can, just as you saw, you can just click on the move and move it someplace else, or you can just fine tune it with the shift and the directions. This is nudging when you just either move it like that, or you just click on that. I'm just using the
the arrow keys on the keyboard. So this is how you can move it north, south, east, west on your floor plan.
Yeah.
So that's how you can move it. That works in the 2D, and it's very good for positioning two-dimensional blocks, groups, and
yeah. So you can move all 4 directions.
I think one thing that we haven't talked about last time when we talked about how to create the roof is the gutter. Because we do have some in this model, but we haven't talked about how to create them. So maybe this will be the place to touch upon that too.
Yeah. Well, actually, there is a dedicated tool to do that, and it's in the building in roof, and it's called the gutter. And then you can just click on one of the edges, the bottom edges of the roof where you would like to place it. This is how this and this was created. So when I click here and I tell the software that I like this cross section, I need to change the material, and I can add a downspout with a specific cross section with a specific path. I can set up where it will be created and so on. Then this is how you can actually fine tweak and create a gutter with all the downspout and everything else. Now I actually already have a saved version of it, so I just load that. This is like styles for the walls and things like that. This will be automatically adopted to the plan. So when I click OK, the software will automatically create that.
Perfect. So you can still reposition it, but the point is that you can pre-save these objects, and then you can work with that. Another thing, and this also comes to the roofs, is how do we create the firewall that we see right here? Because otherwise, we know that the roof is able to cut the wall, but in this scenario, the wall and the roof is in no interaction. So how do we make a shape like that?
Yeah, the keyword here is profiling. You can actually design a profile for a wall. You can always design a cross-section profile, a frontal view profile, and top view profile. Now, this case is when you need to determine how the wall looks from the front. By default, it will be a rectangular shape, and this was already created manually to look like this. To reveal the trick, let me just undo what happened here. If I right-click here, and I select this option here, I can delete the frontal profile. See, this is how it was originally designed. It was a regular normal wall, and then somehow it was reshaped. To reshape a wall, you can go with several options, and now I will go with the most classic approach when you treat it as an elevation design, when you work with the elevation. So for that, I will just go to this view here, and I will set up a specific view. To understand which I should select here, I should always check the 2D as well, because here I can see that actually this wall is this one. Mm-hmm. So if I imagine myself standing here, this is always the situation. If I imagine standing myself here, this is the behind view, this is the front view, this is the left view, and this is the right view. So now I need the view from behind. So I click here, and I select this one, and I go on this list and select this option. So now it's kind of an elevation. We will actually talk about the elevations later, a little bit more detailed in the following session. So now to be able to use this, I need to turn this into a drawing. We already covered that the software automatically turned it into a drawing, but you can do it manually. To be able to draw on it, you need to change it into a vector drawing. So now this is what happens. To be able to work with that as an elevation, I can change this to a hidden line removal drawing. This is what I've got. And then I need to select a part which I would like to use for my editing purposes. Mm-hmm. This is the drawing part that I need to make a copy of. I just use Control Copy, Control C, and I pick it up with this point. And then I move back to my 2D drawing, and I paste it, Control V, and I paste it here. Now, as you can see, this is a bunch of lines. These are already not the original walls or roof items or anything else. This is just the counter line. If I would like to use it for my purposes, I need to click on the outer side of the wall that I would like to cut the profile of. And I need to go to the context menu, and here I can find profile. And as you can see, I can always add a total complete frontal profile, which I can align with the drawing that is a basis of my additions. This is what I do. And then I use the closed loop command here to recognize this
the closed
boundary here.
Once you click on that, you see it already on the elevation drawing.
Or this is the 3D.
An elevation drawing, that's the 3D.
That's actually the 3D just represented as a drawing. And then now when I go back to the original view, the image view, so this is what happens. I can just rotate it around, and then I can go back and change the visual style back to the original. The default is actually consistent color, and this is what you will see then, and that's how it was created. Now the steps leading to this are always the same. Use something as a reference, make a copy of it, and then use the profile command of your wall to follow that reference drawing wherever it comes from.
So that's actually what we wanted to discuss during this conversation on the using architectural drawings and data in ARCHLine webinar. We talked about how to import PDFs, JPEGs, either whether they are vector based or raster images. And we also talked about how to use the XF DWG drawings and how to turn them into a terrain like the one you see on the screen right now. So that's what we wanted to cover today. And anything that we haven't covered will be covered next week when we talk about architectural design documentation. And that's the time and place when we talk about creating sections, elevations, quantity takeoffs, complying a plot layout, even talking about scheduling as well, which is a brand new thing in ARCHLine. But that's something that we are going to talk about next week, same time as today. So see you next Wednesday at 3 p.m. I would like to thank you for your attention, and if you like what you have seen, like and subscribe to our channel, so you will never miss a show like this one. We know that you will want that. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.